Hey, what's going on? My name's Emron. I'm a FANG software engineer. Bro, nobody cares. Anyways, these are some of the best programming languages to learn in 2020. Chad, play the intro clip, please. So, best programming languages is kind of a vague and subjective statement. First off, there's no best language. If someone tells you otherwise, let me know. I'll send my cats after them. Bro, they will destroy you with cuteness. I mentioned in this video that programming languages are just like tools, and certain tools are better for certain jobs. If you don't believe me, try using like a screwdriver to fix everything. Bro, I can't fix this stupid bug. Is that my freaking laptop? So for this video, best programming languages roughly means there are jobs for the language has a reasonable learning curve, the language has a rich ecosystem, which means plenty of libraries, tools, frameworks, stuff like that. And it is required in certain industries, and I'll talk about that more later. I'll be referencing surveys from sites like Stack Overflow, JetBrains, and I'll use my work experience to try and give some real-world context. Bro, let's go! First up, Python. I love Python. It is a beautiful language, it's easy to learn. Every tech company I worked for in the past has used Python for something, including the current company I work for. I also know a lot of Java developers that are trying to transition over to Python because of those reasons. Bro, Python. I got nothing. I love Python. So let's talk about what Python is used for. A common use case for Python is backend web development. So it's basically all the stuff you don't see when you're using some kind of app or website. It could be a REST API, GraphQL API, database client, so writing to a database, reading from a database. You can handle all that with Python. Another popular use case for Python is machine learning. So the stuff that goes into self-driving cars, AI, the smart assistants, Python is very, very popular for that. Data science is another area where Python completely dominates the industry. So if you're doing big data analysis, visualizations, Python's very common for that stuff. You can also create desktop applications with Python. So if you don't want something to run in a web browser, you want it to run locally on your Windows machine, Mac, Linux, there are tools that allow you to use Python to create these applications. If you don't care about having a user interface for your application, you can use Python to create a command line application. So these are apps that will run in a Linux terminal or a Windows command prompt. You can use Python to develop these tools as well. Cool, so those are some of the common use cases for Python. Let's talk about real-world things that were built with Python. If you ever use Dropbox, the desktop application for Dropbox was actually built using Python. If you use Instagram, Instagram's backend, most of it is actually written in Python using a web framework called Django. By the way, if you want to follow me on Instagram, there's a link below. It's mainly just pictures and videos of my cats, but it's perfect. Let's just delete that. There we go. Also, companies like Pinterest, Spotify, they all use Python for a lot of their backend development. Awesome. We talked about what Python is used for, some real-world applications that were built using Python. So let's talk about jobs. So in terms of jobs, according to LinkedIn, as of April 2020, there are about 100,000 jobs that reference Python. And keep in mind that not all companies post on LinkedIn. There are a ton of different sites for job postings, so there are bound to be more jobs than that. Now let's take a look at some of the surveys that talk about Python. This first survey is by a website called Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is just a very, very popular website for software developers where they can post questions and get answers. They conduct a developer survey every year, and for 2019, Python was rated the second most popular language. This survey also showed that Python is the second most loved language and first most wanted language for a third year in a row. Overall, Python is the fastest growing language today. The next language we have to talk about is, actually let me just step aside so I don't get nailed in the face this time, and JavaScript. JavaScript? More like Java Chad, JavaScript is not that bad. Bro, if I want my code to run asynchronously, I will spin up my own threads and make it happen. I am so sorry. He's very opinionated, and he's kind of a wild card. Anyways, at least it's not as bad as Java, bro. Don't freak out, but... What, bro? Bro. What the f***? Okay, let's talk about some of the common use cases for JavaScript. The most common use case for JavaScript is full-stack web development. So that's everything from the front end, what the users see and interact with, as well as the back end. So handling what happens when people click buttons, writing to databases, reading from databases, stuff like that. Now, people tend to link JavaScript with web development, but you can actually build full-blown desktop applications using JavaScript. So these are applications that run locally on Windows, Mac, Linux. There are tools out there that allow you to build this. On top of desktop applications, if you want to build mobile applications, so apps that run on your Android phone, tablets, or iOS devices like iPhones, iPads, there are tools out there that allow you to build mobile apps using JavaScript. Cool, so we talked about some common use cases. Let's talk about real-world applications that were built using JavaScript. So some of the most popular apps built using JavaScript are applications like Discord, Slack, WhatsApp, VS Code, Skype. These applications use JavaScript for a mix of both front-end and back-end work. So looking at the Stack Overflow developer survey, JavaScript was rated the most popular language for 2019. It comes in 11th place for most loved language and 2nd place in most desired or wanted language. Overall, you can use JavaScript for almost everything. It is limited though. You can't really use JavaScript for things like embedded systems. That's like trying to run your code on microprocessors, so a lot of smart devices. You're not going to find JavaScript in there. In terms of the job market, LinkedIn shows about 90,000 job postings that reference JavaScript. Like I said, there are plenty of websites for job postings, so they're likely more than that. Alright, next up, Golang. Golang, more like Brolang. Oh, what the f***, bro? So Golang, or Go, is a language I recently picked up. It is awesome, it's pretty easy to learn, and it's very powerful when it comes to what's called concurrency. Concurrency just means that you can start some kind of task, and while that task is busy doing something, you have some downtime, you can start some other task and take advantage of that downtime. So not in parallel, but concurrently. One of the best things about Go, though, in my opinion, is that the developers are very strict on what new features go into the language. A lot of programming languages right now are very bloated. They kind of just take features from each other, keep adding more features, and then there's like 1,000 ways to do one thing. Trust me, you want less features, you want more consistency, so then you can look at someone else's code and be like, alright, cool, I know what this person's doing. Anyways, let's chat about what we can use Go for. The most common use case for Go right now is backend development, so it is a big competitor to languages like Java, JavaScript, and Python. Now, the big thing that separates Go from languages like JavaScript, Python, is that Go is a statically typed language. I won't get into that now, just Google that if you're interested in knowing more. Similar to Python, with Go you can also build command line applications, so if you need an app that needs to run in a terminal or a Windows command prompt, you can use Go to build those applications as well. You can even use Go to build front-end web applications using a tool called WebAssembly or WASM. It's still a work in progress though, but keep an eye out for it. I think it's going to be the future because not everyone's going to want to program their front end in JavaScript. Now let's talk about some of the common applications or services that were built using Go. One of the most common tools or platforms that was built using Go is Docker. Docker is a platform where you can take your application, build it into some kind of image, send that off, and then other people can pull that image down to their computer and run your application. So they don't have to install any prerequisites to run your application. In a lot of cases, in order to run your app, you have to install this and this and this, and then you can run the app. But using a tool like Docker, it handles all that for you. As a side note, if you are a developer or a new developer, I highly recommend you learn Docker. It is a very, very useful tool. Uber actually uses Go for their geo-based service. It's just the thing that matches the drivers to the riders. Some other services that use Go are YouTube. So parts of YouTube's backend is written in Go, as well as Twitch. So if you watch streamers on Twitch, know that most of their backend services are actually written in Go. So in terms of surveys, the Stack Overflow Developer Survey shows Golang as third for the most wanted language. Another popular survey is by a company called JetBrains. They develop a bunch of tools for software developers. Their survey showed that Golang is the most promising language. The same survey by JetBrains shows that the largest amount of developers chose Golang as a language they want to adopt or migrate to. With respect to jobs, LinkedIn showed a little over 4,000 jobs for Golang. Now it is a lot less, but that's because Golang is a much newer language compared to something like Python, which is like decades old. Overall, Golang is very promising, very pleasant to work with, and hopefully one day it will replace Java. Next up, we have C++. Now, C++ is actually the first language I learned. It's not the easiest to learn. There is a learning curve, but the reason I bring it up is because you absolutely have to use it for things like embedded systems and applications that demand extreme performance. One common use case for C++ is for writing device drivers. It's just software that allows your hardware that you plug into a computer to talk to your operating system, which could be Windows, OS X, or Linux. Another common use case for C++ is for writing code that needs to run on microprocessors or embedded systems, also known as firmware. Bro, I get it. It's not hard, it's not soft, it's firm. Let's go! If you need to develop a desktop application that runs locally on someone's computer, C++ is also a good option for that. You'll find that a lot of applications you currently use are probably running C++. Some real-world applications that were built using C++ are apps like Photoshop. So Adobe uses C++ for a lot of their tools. Smart devices. So if you have a Ring doorbell or security camera, and Alexa, Google Home, all these devices are running low-level firmware that were most likely written with C++. Finally, video games like Doom, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, a lot of these games were written with C++, as well as the tools that help build these games were also written in C++. In terms of surveys, the Stack Overflow Developer Survey placed C++ in 7th for most popular and most wanted language. Not the greatest, but trust me, C++ is not going anywhere anytime. In terms of jobs, LinkedIn showed about 50,000 jobs that mentioned C++. Overall, if you're more interested in hardware, I highly recommend you check out C++. It's very hard to replace. Before I move on, really quick, just drop me a comment below. Let me know what language you're most interested in learning for 2020. If you're here for no reason at all, just leave me a joke, I guess. Also, spam the like button, spam the subscribe button. Seriously, it helps. Bro, are you kidding me? It's literally free. Click those buttons. Let's go! Also, don't feed the trolls in the comments. They'll go away if you leave them alone. These next languages are mainly just honorable mentions. Either they're really new and there aren't that many jobs for them, or I'll get shot if I don't mention them. Jesus. First honorable mention is a language called Rust. So my theory is that Rust will hopefully replace C and C++. It is much more pleasant to work with, and it already has kind of a nice ecosystem. There just aren't that many jobs for it right now. LinkedIn shows about 1,500 jobs, and since it is a newer language, the adoption rate is kind of low right now. But the Stack Overflow Developer Survey shows that Rust is the #1 most loved language and 6th most wanted. Overall, if you are a C or C++ developer or interested in learning C and C++, I highly recommend you check out Rust. The next honorable mention is Java. So Java is still used everywhere for things like backend development, Android application development, desktop applications, and more. There is a learning curve though, and it's not the most pleasant to look at. Things like Python, JavaScript, Go, Rust are much nicer to work with and easier to read. The Stack Overflow Developer Survey ranked Java as the 3rd most popular language, but also the 10th most dreaded language. Also, the JetBrains survey showed that Java was the most popular primary programming language. With respect to jobs, LinkedIn shows about 100,000 jobs mentioning Java. So if your goal is just to get a job right away, you can't go wrong by learning Java. But if you're trying to pick up another language and you're not trying to build an Android application, I highly recommend just choosing Python, JavaScript, Go, because if you can do it in a nicer, more modern language, why wouldn't you? Overall though, like I keep saying, programming languages are just tools, so take some time and find the tool that best suits your problem. Alright, that's all I got. Spam the like button, spam the subscribe button, drop some comments, and bye!